This episode is brought to you by the Ithaca College MBA Entertainment and Media Program. Hello, and welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining me tonight is Jacqui Bransky, the Vice President of Web3 and Innovation at Warner Records. In her current role, she spearheads efforts to develop and implement best-in-class strategies that keep Warner artists at the forefront of technology and enable them to connect with fans in innovative ways. Through her work, she's helped drive revenue growth and elevate artists like aespa, Bebe Rexha, Teddy Swims, Ashnikko, and Mike Shinoda. Prior to joining Warner Records, she held several high-level positions within the industry. As the Director of Commercial Innovation and Artist Strategy at Universal Music Group, she led the development of digital goods and metaverse opportunities across artists, labels, partners, and marketplaces. She also served as the head of U.S. marketing at Friends Management, where she worked with notable acts like Alice in Wonderland. With all of that said, she's a dynamic leader and visionary who continues to push boundaries and drive innovation in the music business, and we are lucky to have her as a guest on tonight's episode. So, Jacqui, thanks for being here. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me. And just a FYI, ChatGPT wrote my bio, so I thought it kind of makes me laugh when I hear it, but I thought I would share that with you.
That's incredible. I was wondering why it was so good. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Awesome. Well, are you ready to dive right in?
Yes.
All right. Question 1. Imagine for a second you're sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give her on a personal note, and what one piece of advice would you give her from a business perspective?
First one on the personal level, 100% go travel, live abroad. Actually, when I was around 25, I had this kind of crisis where I was in my TV development career, and I thought if I deviated off of it, I would never be able to come back, and I never did it, and it's my biggest regret. On a professional level, as I just revealed, I worked in TV and film for about 10 years before I came to music. So my professional advice is don't be so narrow in what you want to do. And every job you have is experience for it, that next job is in your path. I would have not have ended up where I am now if it wasn't for the weird road I took. So just keep trucking along and try find new skill sets as you're building your career.
Yeah, that's great advice. That leads me right to a question that I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned that you worked in TV and film, opposite industry, and in the role that you're in now in Web3 and innovation, that's a role that I have to say I don't think existed like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe not even 3 years ago. So how did you end up in this type of role, and how does it differ from like a traditional digital marketing role?
I was in management, and towards the end of 2020, I had an artist named Chet Porter who was working on his album. He wasn't really feeling creatively inspired, so he started doing physical paintings, and we auctioned them off on his website. It's just like a fun little activity. And one of his fans said, "You should sell this as an NFT." And I was like, "NFT?" And I started investing in crypto in 2017. So quickly light bulb went off my head. And from there, sort of experimented in the space and built up, worked on project with Chet and some other artists in Alice in Wonderland. And then from there, I was like, this is going to change the music industry. And Web3 has changed a lot, but I think it's more of how I've always been interested in new technology, obviously working with getting involved in crypto and stuff, and working at Snapchat in their first iteration of original content. So for me, it was like an easy sort of fit, like let's find new creative ways to market music and artists. And so I love it. It's great.
And for those that don't quite know what Web3 is, can you give like a brief description?
Sure. And if you ask anyone, you're going to get 10 different answers. So this is my version. Really simple, anything having to do with digital ownership and digital goods. If you take Instagram's the best example. We are all content creators. We post on Instagram, and Instagram monetizes our content. How is that fair or right? Basically like 4 companies on the whole internet when we're all the ones creating and participating in that process. So it's really about digital ownership and taking that back. And also in my mind includes, metaverse, which again is another loose term. But the best way I always explain my role is I use new technologies to deepen the artist to fan relationship.
Cool. All right, moving on to the next question. Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and we all know that that's no different in the music industry. And sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they can be quite good. What's one secret that you would like to share with our listeners about the industry?
Yeah, this is funny. A friend of mine who I actually was talking to today, he told me when I was thinking about, coming into the music industry after working in film and TV, and he was like, "You love music so much." He's like, "Your relationship with music will change." And I totally know what he means now. There's a big difference when you start going to concerts because it's work, or you listen to something because it's work. The same thing happened in film and TV. When it becomes work, it's a different relationship. But I think the biggest thing to learn from that is, if you are going to go into music and you're a music lover like me, is really separating when it's work and when it's fun, and finding those artists, paying for a ticket, not being on the guest list, and going, having fun, and being able to, separate it. I still have a hard time when I'm watching an artist and I'm like, well, that production must have cost that, or they should have done that. And I'm like, stop critiquing and just enjoy the damn show. So it's definitely a struggle, but I think, that's a big thing that most of us all struggle with, is, turning our passion and love for music into work.
For sure. What's the last show that you went to that you weren't on the guest list?
Nightmare Before Christmas. And I went with my nephew and my sister and her husband, and we sat in a box at the Hollywood Bowl. And I would have never gone to the show if it wasn't for my nephew loving the movie, and it was the best. But the concert I wanted to say, but I did a ticket buy, was Fred again at the Shrine. And that is just pure fun. And it was an amazing show.
Both sound equally amazing. All right, final question. Throughout your career, I can only imagine that you've been asked plenty of questions, whether it was for an industry conference, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all of those interviews and all of those questions, I'll bet there was one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So, what is that question, and what would be your answer?
So I definitely struggled with this one. And I think the big one is it's more of the questions I've been asked and how it should be asked. Is a lot of times, especially because I participate in different, kind of more heavily tech and disruptor conferences, is, why labels are bad, or why you should go independent, and all those sort of things. So I guess my question is to ask myself is, why a label outside the obvious reasons, and I think a lot of artists have recently come out, complaining about their labels. And listen, I think there's a lot wrong with them, and I actually had a hard time taking a role at a label. It was kind of an existential crisis, but I think there's more good than bad. And I think knowing that my role, I'm the first person to hold this role, and there's a couple other labels who have these type of roles, or at least people focusing on the space, like, music is always the first industry that's willing to change and disrupt. And I also think you have the most ability to do that from being within the bad guy, so to speak. And I'm really trying to, try different things out, and shape the way we look at things, and kind of experiment. And that's super awesome. And I also think at the end of the day, like, labels are the most adaptable people in the music industry. And I think things are going to change in the next couple of years. People always ask me to predict what it's going to be. I don't know, but I definitely want to be part of it and be one of those projects that changes the game.
Totally. Before we hop off, I wanted to ask one last question. What is a project that you've worked on in the last year that was the most rewarding, but also the most difficult project to work on?
So it's sort of two projects kind of in one that have similar things. Recently, I've been really experimenting, luckily with our artists, on this gamifying fan loyalty and rewarding fans for their participation. So I've ran a campaign with aespa and now with Mike Shinoda. And aespa kind of happened so the Mike Shinoda project could really take off. But basically, it's, having this digital asset all off chain. And it's, for aespa, was the album artwork was a bouquet of flowers, and you basically grew your flower and you had to listen and share the song every day across 2 weeks. And then there was different levels that you got different rewards. And then everyone got their own individual bouquet depending on how much you participated. I really was trying to find a unique idea for aespa and how to engage with, sort of the K-pop army, as they're called, knowing that they'll do whatever you ask for and love exclusive content. So it was really hard getting that one across the line and doing something that's never been done before. But it was super rewarding that it drove a ton of streams and engaged with the fans, and they absolutely loved it. I have a whole list of fun comments from them. And then from that, had a meeting with Mike Shinoda, and I just briefly mentioned this, and he's like, I love it. It's like a Tamagotchi. And he really took this idea to the next level, and it's still ongoing right now. It's called Survival. And basically you adopt a critter, and you have to feed it, and you have to do a bunch of different actions like streaming, watching the music video, using the TikTok sound, liking Mike Shinoda and Linkin Park on Spotify. And then we unleashed battle mode, where you now can battle depending on what your different species of critter are. And there's 9 different ones, and there's more things to be unfolded. And it's just, to me, Mike Shinoda, being able to work with him as somebody who's always using new technology and the first to it. And for me to be able to bring an idea to him that he was like, I love that, let's do this together. It's been super rewarding. So both of those together. I know that was a bit long-winded.
No, that sounds super cool. And who do you get to build those things? Are it typically like engineers that build those types of
Actually,
things?
somebody who's been on your show before, Joe Bowman, who works at Hi-Fi. They're the team, the tech team and creatives who we work with this together. It was definitely, Hi-Fi, Warner Records, and a Mike Shinoda sort of project. It was all of us kind of coming together and wanting to use technology to do cool shit.
Awesome. Well, Jacqui, thank you so much for joining me. And
Thanks for
to
having me.
everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Stay tuned for next week of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. One final reminder, this episode is brought to you by the Ithaca College MBA Entertainment and Media program. See you next time.